even though we may not have been brought up in a church, we still have an idea or a belief that there's a God. I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't believe that. Now, I want to say this to you. I believe in what I call truth in advertising. So today, as I'm sitting here in front of you, I can say with a clear conscience 4 words: I am a Christian. The problem is, believing in God does not make you a Christian. And that's where my story sort of comes along. My name is Arlen Schroeder. My mother was Catholic. My father was Lutheran. And the solution to a problem like that back in the 1930s was, if he's going to marry this Catholic girl, he has to agree that the children of that marriage will be raised Catholic. It sets up in your mind what I would call a problem of sort. I mean, who's right? Who's wrong? Is there a right or a wrong? When I got to high school, I was 16. So I go to this first assembly. I don't know how I managed to figure this all out, but I can remember there, and this chick sits down beside me over here. Okay, my name's Schroeder. Her name was Chouette. Her maiden name was Chouette. Then the next thing, I go to find my locker, and that is alphabetical order. So this gal is right here, and as time goes by, and I'm 16, I start getting interested. So what happened was, I start bend over, get something in the bottom of my locker, bang, the door hits me. I look up, she's smiling. I figure that was an accident. Go on. Next day, bang. After I got banged on the head about 4 or 5 times, I got it through. She got through to me. She's sort of sending me a message. But I've got to follow through on it. Believe it or not, this is 1 week after our first date. I said to myself, this is the girl I'm going to marry. That's my decision. She doesn't know it, but this is what I'm going to do. But from that moment on, my situation sort of changed. I thought this was biblical, and I loved it. God helps those who help themselves. I didn't want to be bothered with church on Sunday. I knew what I wanted to do. And so I started going about my business. And what's really bad about that is that sort of takes God out of your life. When I turned 20, both of us were 20 years of age. We were going to get ready to get married. And then my wife to be spoke up, and I thank God every day for this. She said to me, my church is important to me. I want to know if when we get married, will you see to it that we as a and she stressed family, that means me too, that we as a family get to church on Sunday. And I thought about that for a few seconds. I couldn't think of, there's got to be things worse in this world than to marry a girl who says, my church is important to me. And I gave her a 1-word answer, and the word was yes. I kept my word all these years. If I stopped right there, boy, I could be sort of proud of myself. And I actually did the math on this. You know, we go to church probably average about 48 out of 52 weeks out of the year. And over 61 years, that's over 2,900 Sundays. So I think I'm a pro now when it comes to going to church on Sunday. But if that were the story, I wouldn't have a story. But the truth was, it started right out day one. If you're going to become a Lutheran, you got to go have, a new member class. Well, that new member class was on Sunday afternoons. And back in the 50s, the Detroit Lions really had a good team. And I wanted to see the Lions. And now I have to go to church, and so I did it. And my wife, she knew I wasn't happy, wife to be, she knew I wasn't happy about it, but she stuck with me. And when we started with church, I say, I'm one, if I can't be honest with myself, I can't be honest with other people. And I had lots of doubts. And I tried to tell you about my childhood, like, a bit. I hope you can see where the confusion and problems in your mind and doubts will enter. And I wasn't about to go to any church and go beyond what I believe. But along the way, I did run into a pastor down there. His name was Anderson, Bert Anderson. And he did a lot for me. I didn't come to faith because specifically what he did, but what he taught, the really valuable thing was, he got me to look beyond whether or not Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were in that fiery furnace, and God, put them in there, and they didn't die, and so forth. I mean, those kind of things would give me a hang-up. But he said, read for the message. What is the message? And that really helped me a lot. And I started the first time ever, and this is, like I say, this is almost 20 years later. In his sermons, I wasn't understanding some things. And so I started going to Bible class. I want to understand. I may not agree, but I want to understand. So that was part of it. What happened was I was a jogger. And eventually I completed 3 marathons. One day, I'm running down the street. It happens this fast. But what I got to tell you, what didn't happen, and this is relevant. How do we deal with this world around us? It's through our sensory system. I mean, you can see me, you can hear me, I can see and hear you. So we got sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. But what happened to me didn't involve any of that. I'm going down the road, and I'm watching traffic. I hear everything going on, and I'm very much alert to that. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I saw it was inside here. I always said about it, it looked like I saw a theater marquee. Now, it was black and white. There was no color. And on this marquee was just a 4-word sentence. The words were, "Do I embarrass you?" Man, I cannot begin to tell you how devastating that was. This bothered me from top to toe. And I can't describe it because I don't have a word to actually indicate that. But I knew I was guilty. And I knew in my mind, this question, I couldn't think of a question I'd make up that would be more difficult to deal with than that one. And it only took an instant. And I decided I better come clean. And I said yes. And I'll tell you, just as fast as that, I felt, from the tip of my toes to the top of my head, I felt wonderful. I can't begin to tell you how great I felt. Now, later afterwards, I look back on that. What happened? What did I do? Basically, that was a confession. That one word, yes, was my confession. And this joy that I've had ever since is a result, well, I believe a result of the Holy Spirit. And so, let me read this to you. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 14. Guard the good deposit that was entrusted to you. Well, let me just clarify that a bit. The Apostle Paul was teaching Timothy, a young man, about the Christian faith. And that's what he's referring to when he says, guard the good deposit that was entrusted to you. But listen to this. Guard it with the help of the Holy Spirit who lives in us. Now, man, that is exciting. That's exciting because it answers for me, it explains for me how I could possibly have that question presented to me. And I am so thankful that I had the courage to say yes. But I think he really knew that I would. Maybe, but this was to me God throwing a life preserver. You know, when you deal with doubts, whether it's that or Jonah and the whale, not the whale, the big fish, and Jonah was in the big fish for 3 days, and then he was vomited up on the beach, on the shore. I mean, if you ask me this question, do I believe that that actually happened? I can't say that I do. As far as I'm concerned, here's something I know. An infinite God is a God who can do anything that God chooses. He can either do it or he can cause it to happen. And here's my solution. Here I am, all 220 pounds of me. If God chose to do so, he could put me in a minnow, not a big fish, in a minnow smaller than my little finger. And if he put me in there for 3 days and wanted me to come out, just like he did on the third day, remember the resurrection, third day is important. I could come out in better health than I am now. That to me isn't even a belief. To me, that's a fact. Without those doubts, I may never have been challenged enough to think through to that at that level, to those ideas. But the doubts that I had became the fuel for the faith. This is from John chapter 3, verse 21. Now, this is Jesus himself. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly, so that what he has done has been done through God.